Hey everyone, thank you all for tuning in to Curable's Instagram. I'm Tressa, and today I am here with Becky, who is going to share the details of her healing journey with us. Becky, I am so happy you could join us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to share my story.
Well, we're excited to hear it. So Becky, to kick things off, could you think back to the beginning of your healing journey and tell us a little bit about what was going on for you at that time?
Yeah, so, well, let's start with my pain journey, I guess. Is that where you'd like to start? When I first started having pain. So it was 10 years ago. I can remember, I could probably tell you the exact date. It was a very memorable event in my life. It was in 2011. And what was going on in my life then, I was in my final month of physical therapy school. I was about to get my doctorate. I had a job lined up. I was going to start kind of my dream job the week after graduation. I had recently moved in with my now husband. So looking back, there was sort of a stressful period in my life, all good stress, but we did have kind of a lot going on at the time.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like super exciting stuff, but it could be a little bit stressful. So what were your symptoms that you first started experiencing?
Yeah, so one day, I was healthy as always, and I had been volunteering at this medical tent, so not doing anything super intensive, but I walked home from that and I was literally just standing in my kitchen making a sandwich when all of a sudden I got this excruciating back pain, low back pain. Really, I don't even know if pain is the right word. For me, a lot of times this feeling of instability was really my primary symptom. So that was pretty debilitating right in that moment. I remember I literally collapsed to my floor and couldn't move. So that happened very acutely. I had never had back pain before that. And from what I remember, I think after a couple of days of rest and ice, I decided to go see a physician. They prescribed me some steroids and I got better from there. I was able to return to all my usual activities. I returned to running. However, that sort of precipitated this 10-year period of my life of me going through these back pain exacerbations, and really from there, never really getting fully back to normal, sort of on this downward trajectory over the next 10 years.
Wow, so 10 years of the ups and downs with this back pain. That's pretty wild. After seeing that physician initially, did you go back and seek more treatment over the course of these 10 years?
Yeah, so what happened after that is, so I got better first, and then I started my new job. And my job at the time was fairly physically demanding. I work in a hospital-based setting, so there's a lot of really sick patients, a lot of really debilitated and sometimes larger patients. So it involved a lot of heavy lifting, awkward twisting, a lot of movements like that. So it was probably within the first year or so was the first time that I injured myself at work, which then required me to go through this whole workers' compensation cycle of treatment. So both on my own and through workers' compensation, I have had multiple bouts of physical therapy. I have seen multiple different doctors. I've seen pain management specialists. I had spinal injections at one point. I've done lots of Pilates. At some point, I convinced myself that that would fix the problem, but anything that I did try would maybe work temporarily. But I was starting to feel very discouraged throughout this process that there really was no fix for this problem, and it was going to be something that I was going to have to live with for the rest of my life. And I was only probably 25 years old when this started. So in my head, now I can identify that I was getting very catastrophic. I'm thinking I just got my doctorate degree. I spent a lot of money to get this degree, and I am less than a year into my career, and I just don't know how I'm going to be able to do this long term.
Wow, so that sounds pretty heavy.
It was.
Catastrophic. Catastrophic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, I would say, outwardly, the people who know me probably wouldn't have recognized that I had these feelings, because at the same time, I felt sort of ashamed for some reason about my pain, like it was kind of embarrassing. So I would try to hide it, and avoid having to go the workers' compensation route until it got to the point where I could barely walk.
Oh my gosh. So when it did get to the point where you could barely walk, what were you thinking, and where'd you go from there?
Yeah, so I was thinking each time it would happen, I would just have that whole cycle of thinking of, okay, now I'll maybe get better in a month or so and be able to go back to work, but I know it's going to happen again. So how am I going to continue to do my job? I had started thinking about just other options, like management. I hated management. I never wanted to do that. So I just started thinking very long term. Do I need to change careers completely? What can I do?
Man, that sounds really devastating for something that you just worked so hard to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
You're in your first role as this profession, as a physical therapist, and you are thinking that you're going to have to change because of this pain.
Yeah.
So when did you start toying with the idea of like the mind-body connection to your pain? And when did you start considering curable as a way to potentially help?
Yeah, so I feel like I should give a disclaimer here that while I am a physical therapist and probably should not have taken 10 years to get to this point, I primarily work in critical care. So I don't think a lot about chronic pain and I don't stay up to date on that literature. So what really triggered it for me was I think it was last year, probably 2021 or maybe 2020. I had gone to see a new primary care physician that I had. My previous one had retired. So I wasn't there for pain, but, just as part of the get to know you process, she's reviewing my medical record and she comments, of course, now I have these ugly diagnoses on my medical chart, chronic back pain and things like that are kind of, I don't like that. So she, even though I kind of minimized it, and I was like, oh, it just is what it is, and I just live with it now. She asked more questions. She asked me what I had done to try to treat it. So I told her, everything I had done, and she didn't suggest necessarily a mind-body approach, but what she did suggest was that we start a medication, an SSRI, Cymbalta or duloxetine, which is used in the treatment of depression. And I knew that it was also used as a chronic pain treatment. However, I'd never really, I guess, mentally lumped myself into that category. So I had said, I will try anything. So I did. I tried the medication for maybe 1 or 2 days and it had some pretty bad side effects for me. So I stopped taking it almost immediately. However, that sort of led me down a rabbit hole of why are these medications effective in the treatment of chronic pain? And so then I started doing my own research. I started researching chronic pain and physical therapy strategies and the role that the sympathetic nervous system and the nervous system in general has in pain. And so I think somewhere along my Google search, curable got advertised to me. And despite having done this amount of research, I was still pretty skeptical, I will say. And I almost didn't even try it, but I told myself, you have said to yourself multiple times that you would do anything to get rid of this pain. And I'm sure a lot of chronic pain sufferers can relate to that. And that's how badly it was affecting my life. So then I kind of had this self-talk moment where I was like, okay, this is not a high-risk activity you're doing here. It doesn't cost a lot of money. You might as well just try it and give it a go.
Yeah, totally. Wow, that's so interesting that you were first presented with antidepressant medication to treat your chronic pain. And then you kind of connected the dots between like, hey, there might be a link here.
Yeah, I think there's something to that.
Something to that. And we now know that there is something to that. So in the Curable app, we have 4 categories: brain training, education, meditation, and journaling. What of those 4 categories really resonated with you the most, if you can recall?
Yeah, so I am kind of a passive, some would say lazy learner. So for me, the education was great. I could just listen to it like a podcast, like I listen to all the time. So that was what I started with. And at the same time, I downloaded the Curable podcast. I started listening to those at the same time. And I also started listening to like PT orthopedic podcasts that were talking about this topic as well. So for me, I'm probably not the typical Curable customer in that I swear to you, within like 1 day of listening to these education topics, I was already substantially better from the 10 years of pain that I have had. So wow. I think just opening my mind was the biggest thing, realizing that those concepts could apply to me. I did do some of the other activities. So I did the journaling, which I really hate journaling, but I made myself do it. And I do think that is valuable and it's probably something that I should continue doing. And I remember one of the brain games that I tried very early on, it was something to do with substituting those negative words that you're saying to yourself with positive words. So this was probably the first day I ever used the app, and I did that activity. And then a few hours later, I went out for a walk and I started to feel some back pain. And normally I would have thoughts like, oh, if I just move the wrong way, my back is going to go out, and I'm going to be debilitated for days and I'm not going to be able to go to work tomorrow and I'm going to have all these problems. But instead, I changed my self-talk and I thought something like, my back just feels, maybe a little bit less stable than it usually would. And I just continued on with my activities and without making any modifications. And I just noticed that I was fine and my pain got better and it went away and there wasn't a problem. So I think that was probably the moment when I really started to think, okay, not only is the science there, but I actually think this could apply to me.
Wow, too cool, too cool. So what do you still apply in your day-to-day? Do you ever have setbacks? And if so, how do you handle them?
So that's a great question. So like I said, I'm a lazy learner. So I used Curable for maybe a month, and my back pain got 95% better in that time. And I cannot emphasize enough how significant that was. My back was it was the worst part of my life. So it got 95% better during that time. So I stopped using Curable, and every now and then, if I would feel a little twinge, I would go back to the things that I had learned, or I would listen to the Like Mind, Like Body podcast. However, I can't say I don't have setbacks. I think my back is better, but now I'm kind of uncovering these layers. So last year I had a knee surgery on a torn meniscus, and now a year later, I'm wondering whether I should have had that and whether I could have maybe used mind-body approaches to make myself quite a bit better than I was. I'm having a neck issue that I've been telling myself is this acute issue, but now I'm realizing it's been going on for a year. So I think even though I have opened my mind to this, I think until something gets so debilitating to the point like my back was, that I'm happily ignoring them for now, but have been starting to think lately that yes, I probably do need to use a mind-body approach in other areas of my body.
And it's so good to have the tools in your back pocket that have worked for you in the past and that you can always lean on moving forward in the future. Yeah, because everything's acute until it becomes chronic, right?
That was what I told myself about my back too. Well, I mean, it's just, I had this really acute onset. It's an acute issue. Then the doctor would look at my chart and say, so it happened 8 years ago.
Oh man. So we are almost out of time, but I want to know, how has your life been different now than 10 years ago at the onset of your pain?
I'm a lot less fearful, I think. I feel like my body is strong and like I have the ability to modulate my pain, and to, even when I do go into an acute pain crisis, if I do again, I feel not hopeless. I feel like I'm going to come out of that. I'm going to be a functioning human again and go about my life. And none of this is going to be permanent. I think for me as a PT, a lot of my training revolved around thinking about these tiny little joint dysfunctions that people have and how that contributes to their pain. And that was reinforced to me in my own therapy sessions that I had gone to. So I think getting out of that mindset and realizing that I can move without injuring myself has just allowed me to return to really all my previous activities without fear of my back going out and me becoming debilitated somewhere.
Nice, Becky. That's really cool to hear. So yeah, we're about out of time, unfortunately. It's been awesome talking to you. Do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share before we wrap up?
I guess I would say to anybody watching, just open your mind. You probably already are if you're watching this, but I have become a Curable evangelist. And I think that almost anybody who I tell about Curable, they say, oh, well, that doesn't apply to me because I have a herniated disc and I have arthritis. Well, I have all those things on my images too. And it still helped me 95% of the way. So I think just realize that all pain comes from your brain, so we can use our brains to affect it.
Whew. Wow, Becky, well said. That was amazing. Mic drop right there. Fantastic. Thank you. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing with us today.
You are so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And to everyone at home watching, thank you all so much for being here. If any part of Becky's story really resonated with you and you'd like to share that with us, please let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from y'all. And if you missed any part of today's story, I know Becky dropped a lot of bombs of wisdom on us. So I know y'all probably want to go back and rewatch that. This video will be saved to our YouTube channel and right here to our Instagram videos. Becky, thanks again.
Thank you.